Hello, how is it going, everybody? And welcome to Ask Me Anything About Politics. This is the show. Oh, fuck me. Kidding me. Oh boy, oh boy. Okay. My apologies to TikTok. I need to fix my audio. Add a microphone. So, yeah, this is the show where you can ask me anything that you like about politics, and there's no judgments, there's no roasting, there's no debating. It is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. So if you got any questions about politics, just let me know in the chat, and I will do my best to give you a great answer. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. What's up, Shawnee? Good to see you again. And I know that politics can be particularly difficult to parse these days with all of the misinformation and propaganda that is out there circulating. What's up, Muzz King? Good to see you. Grand Garcon says, stance on Palestine. I mean, I don't think that anybody can. I think that anybody who their stance on Palestine is not that they are suffering from barbaric treatment by the Israeli government has some sort of a I don't know, ulterior motive or a bad faith agenda. But yeah, multiple groups have just have labeled it a G-side. The International Criminal Court has found war crimes. People were describing it as an open air prison before October 7th. So it's pretty cut and dry if you ask me. Oof, excuse me. All right, excellent first questions of the day, everybody. Welcome to Ask Me Anything About Politics. I am here to answer all of your questions about politics, regardless of if you are a left wing person or a right wing person. I don't care if you are a Democrat or Republican or something else entirely. I am here to answer all of your good faith questions, regardless. This is not a show for fighting or for debating or for calling each other names or trying to own each other or trying to destroy each other. It is just good faith answers to all good faith questions. So you're not going to see any fighting here on the channel. You're not going to see me calling people up just to call them stupid or uninformed or fascist. And yeah, Tino says, do you think Dearborn has a problem? I actually don't know what's going on in Dearborn, but I have heard people talk about it on the live streams. I just haven't looked into it yet. Maybe you can tell me a little bit more about that, Tino. Let me know. All right, excellent questions so far. So yeah, any questions about politics? Just put them in the chat. Fletch lives again. Good to see you again. Any suggestions on being careful at the No Kings protest? It's interesting. Ball Frank says, "Do you think Trump has a problem?" I think he's got a lot of problems. So as far as like being safe at the protests go, there are two different, you know, uh, camps that you could fall into. Either you don't want to be, you know, influenced by the threat of the Trump administration having, taking retribution on the people that participate in those, in those protests, or you want to be safe in case they do decide to come after people that were at the protests. And honestly, I don't really know which side is correct. My gut is telling me that people should just do this regular style, and if there are, if there is political retribution, then that will potentially galvanize more people. The more people that don't hide the fact that they're going to this protest, the more targets that they potentially have. And so you're making the protest safer for everybody else by not, like covering your face or not bringing your phone or stuff like that. But I don't know. I don't know if everybody wants to take that risk. I think that part of political resistance in this era is accepting the risk and accepting that the risk is potentially politically productive, the same way that the people that marched in Selma recognized that them getting the shit kicked out of them was potentially politically productive. Like that was the entire strategy, was we need to show the world how terrible these southern racists are, and then potentially we will get some national recognition and potentially some national legislation, stuff like that. But I can't tell people to make those sacrifices. So I did see a video just recently today about you want to buy cheap nondescript clothing that you can throw away afterwards. Don't bring your phone, cover your face, don't take any pictures, don't tell anybody that you were there, stuff like that. I don't know how much of that I'm going to personally, ascribe to, yeah. Anyways, let's get back into these TikTok comments. Terry says, "What do you know about NPSM7?" I think that's the like executive order that says that left wing people are terrorist organizations. Is that right, Terry? Refresh my memory. Time Slayer says, "Sir, how are you this gorgeous and not globally famous?" Stop! You're gonna make me blush. Last Bite Left says, "Do you think Prop 50 California's gerrymander restricts elite Democrats is reasonable?" It is the definition of reasonable, Last Bite. It is literally just, we are only doing this because the Republicans are doing this. We don't want to be doing this. We're going to stop doing this. If they stop doing this, we will encourage our federal government to make partisan and racial gerrymandering illegal. But until that happens, unfortunately, we have to retaliate and we have to disenfranchise the Republicans that live in our state because Texas and other red states won't stop, what's the word I'm looking for? Discriminating against Democratic voters in their state. Big Burn says, "What side are you on?" I am on the side of the people, the 99%, and that is why I'm a Democrat. Eric says, "Thanks for reposting Graham Plattner. I saw it just in his campaign." Yeah, Graham Plattner's great. I love it. Terry says, "Yes, they're compiling lists." I mean, what they are doing is illegal and unconstitutional. Unfortunately, we do not have a lot of people at the higher levels of government right now who give a shit that what ICE and Trump are doing is illegal and unconstitutional. But we have the power to change that. And so it is up to us to not be cowed by the threat of being put on their stupid fucking list that is completely fucking illegal, and it fucking sucks to say this. I hate to say this, but this is the reason why we should have voted for Kamala Harris, is because now being an activist is dangerous and trying to fight the Trump administration is dangerous, whereas fighting the Kamala Harris administration would not have been. Let's see here. Jackie Hatfield says, "It's obvious that you know what is going on." Thank you, Jackie. I appreciate saying that. Jack says, "Is anti-Semitism at an all-time high? If so, why?" So I wouldn't say that it's at an all-time high. Maybe globally it has been worse in the past or whatever, but it's definitely very high right now. It's higher than it's been in a long time. Why is a harder question to answer. There are a lot of factors. I put some responsibility on the comedy community, if I'm being sincere, in that a lot of people, myself included, sometimes liked to make anti-Semitic jokes that felt very antiquated, but in reality, we were potentially just feeding a fire of people that actually believed those things. So the kind of ironic anti-Semitism or racism or misogyny that you might see on, like certain edgy programs or edgy comedians, oftentimes people will watch that and be like, I actually agree with what that person says, and I really like that they are saying it. But I think a stronger, I don't know, I think the stronger causes, like the bigger forces, were things like Donald Trump getting elected and empowering a base of people that were more prone to dislike other groups, misogynist, racist, and anti-Semitism. And then also the actions of the Israeli government, which a lot of people associate with Jewish people en masse, where we can have, a long conversation about all of the sins of the Netanyahu government and the lobbying organization AIPAC. A lot of people then take the next step of saying, oh, those are Jewish organizations, therefore Jewish people are bad because they are doing this. Okay, wow, comments have really stopped. I guess everybody was really interested in hearing that diatribe. Michael Hutchinson says, "Trump is having a picnic, us closing Democrats' programs, us." Yeah, he doesn't give a shit about people getting hurt. He is trying to enact political retribution on people that disagree with him, and that's really shitty. And so even if you disagree with Democrats, I think that everybody should be standing against the Trump administration for doing this shit. Okay, Last Bite Left says, "I'm a Democrat, but wouldn't Prop 50 galvanize a lot of Republican voters to the right even more?" I mean, I don't think that we can do politics like that. I don't think that we can do politics worrying about what the people that aren't going to vote for Democrats are going to do in response. I don't think that we can do politics worried about what they're going to say on Fox News or Breitbart or the Daily Wire, because they're going to shit on the left and Democrats and do a whole bunch of lies regardless of what happens. Even if Democrats are pitch perfect, they're going to make shit up, like the death panels that happened during the death panel, narrative that that sprung up during the Affordable Care Act negotiations. So yeah, I would hope that Republicans living in California recognize that this is not California wanting to disenfranchise Republican voters, but that Texas and red states are disenfranchising Democratic voters, and so in order to stay competitive nationally, Democrats have to do the same thing in California and Illinois and New York potentially. Terry says, I'm going to protest this weekend. Excellent. Everybody should go to the No Kings protest on Saturday. Everybody should go 100%. Jimmy Gromley says, what is he stating is what the right party is going through. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Jimmy Gormley. Dan Blackburn says, and Trump made Steve Bannon his chief of staff at his first term. That is accurate. Leonard Glenn says, you purposely bypassed my comment on fake term anti-Semitism. Most are from Europe. I didn't purposely skip your comment. I didn't see it, Leonard. And I'm not even seeing it now. So potentially you're completely full of it, or TikTok censored your comment because it was against their terms of service. Last Bite Left says, I never thought of it that way. I think you may have swayed me to vote yes on Prop 50. Oh, I'm really glad. That's part of what I do here is I'm trying to convince people to vote in ways that are more productive, Thank you, Dan, for making fun of the way that I read these names. I'm not great at it. I've never claimed that I was. Jimmy Gormley says, I said all the things that you are saying is exactly what the left is doing to the right. No, that is inaccurate, Jimmy Gormley. There is not a war on the right perpetuated by the left, but there is a war on the left perpetuated by the right. If you would like me to speak on that in more details, I will. But just based on the fact that you are not asking questions, you are just making statements, I don't think that you actually are interested in hearing anything that goes against your priors. Marie says, what do we get out of bailing out Argentina? Well, what we get, Americans, is nothing. We get fucked. Our farmers have all their soybean contracts with China canceled, so now there's going to be a bunch more farmers who are going to lose their farms and potentially be homeless and die of starvation and shit like that. What Trump gets is a bunch of his billionaire buddies that are heavily invested in the Argentinian market are going to get a huge payout from that 20 billion. They're not going to lose their investments whatsoever. Also, because Argentina is a libertarian government, when their economy succeeds, it looks better for Republicans here in America. Like, look, it worked in Argentina, it can work here in America as well. Also the president or prime minister of Argentina kissed Trump's ass, and so he likes helping out the people that kiss his ass to try to incentivize other people to kiss his ass. Oi. Jimmy Gormley says, I understand you don't see it like that because you're on the left. You're spelled incorrectly. Jimmy Gormley says, because I'm sick of the narrative that the left is such the victim party. I mean, Jimmy, I don't think that anybody who's been paying attention to politics for the last 50 years can disagree with the idea that the right has been just unabashedly beating the shit out of the left, not like electorally, but through right-wing propaganda and the rhetoric of right-wing politicians and stuff like that. And that doesn't exist on the left. Like, I'm sure you can find me some random people on the internet who do that, but there is a massive difference between the people at the very top of the Democratic establishment, like elected leaders and thought leaders, and people on the right in the same categories. But if you disagree with me on that, Gormley, let me know. Let's talk specifics, man, because right now we're just saying what you believe and what I believe, but I think that the data proves that I am right in this. Let's see here. Terp Shore says, the plans of some very rich, very powerful people. I'm not sure what that is reference to, but sure. Tim Custer says, peace in the Middle East. It would be great if that happened, but it hasn't happened yet. David Douglas says, ever since they repealed the Fairness Doctrine. That is also accurate. Leonard Glenn says, business as usual for the top 1%. Again, not really sure what that is in reference to. Jack says, do you believe the island guy is still alive? There's, of course, rumors. Online, what do you think? I don't think he is, but even if he is, I don't really care. Let's see here. El Lunatico says Americans are no longer in charge of USA. I mean, the extreme right wing of America is in charge of the USA right now. So the billionaire class, Donald Trump, Republican Party, those are the ones. Tim Custer says, are they fighting now? There are. The ceasefire has already been violated multiple times. Nowhere Forever says, have you been keeping tabs on the rise of the Green Party in the UK? No, I have not. But if they're anything like the Green Party here in America, I would say run, UK, away from the Green Party. Jack says, do you think he committed YK, or was he moited, or do you not care? I think there's a lot of really shady shit surrounding the there should not have been the opportunity for him to do that. I think he probably got. That just makes a lot of sense to me. But again, I don't really think it changes things. It's more of like a conversation in like for like a cocktail party. Like, oh, what do you think? What do you think? But we have to live in the reality of what we kind of all collectively think happened, which is that he. Ooh, Zulu says Island Files going to get released once the House returns with 218 signature. I mean, unless Republicans and Mike Johnson try to do some other shady shit. I think we all need to prepare ourselves, though, for the fact that these documents have been doctored because they are sitting in the hands of Kash Patel, who is a Trump lackey. And even the number 2 at the FBI, Dan Bongino, is a full-on Trump lackey. And so they have had a lot of time to sit with these documents and potentially destroy stuff, potentially insert stuff. So, yeah. Tim Custer says, why are Dems praising Trump? I mean, I think they're probably giving him kudos for negotiating the hostage release, but I don't really think that he deserves all that kudos. So I think people are just being really nice because we don't want to be accused of disagreeing with everything Trump does, even if it is something that is, good, like hostages getting released and people being illegally detained by the IDF getting released. Let's see here. Tim Custer says, are you elected? No, I am not. Nowhere Forever says, are there any good right-wing comedy writers? Not to my knowledge. S says, why do we have a two-party system? I know we have independent parties, but why are they not as big? So Skylar says I look like Superman. Stop! Good Lord. He doesn't have a beard. Okay, so why do we have a two-party system? So the structure of American government makes it so that a political party gets rewarded for already having been established. Because of things like the Electoral College, gerrymandering, the Senate map, districting, election, campaign finance laws, things like that, it's really difficult for independent parties to sort of like establish themselves in, in the way that the main two parties have, where, even if an independent party got a significant portion of the vote, it's still very unlikely that they could win even a single state. And without winning that single state, they essentially have 0 electors. And so, there's a massive barrier to entry for all these independent parties. And none of them are doing it correctly. None of them are actually trying to build up infrastructure and name ID and local support over the long term. The only one that's even close is the Working Families Party. And they understand that this is a long project to try to become an established political party. Without things like ranked choice voting that makes it easier for independent parties to flourish, then independent parties will not flourish in America. CS says, how do we get establishment Dems to stop being stuck in their ways? You got to vote them out of office. That is the way that you do it. The more we do work for electing better Democrats in the primary, the more the establishment Dems will recognize, oh, this is the way the country is going. This is the way our party is going. What you need to recognize about establishment Dems is that they have a really difficult job of managing all the different coalitions that exist within the Democratic Party. Some of that is appeasing the progressives. Some of that is appeasing the centrists, the LGBTQ community, the African-American community, the Jewish community, the women community. Like, it's all represented within the Democratic Party. And, spinning all those plates can be really difficult. And it could make you sound really milquetoast and do a lot of word salad. And, and nobody is going to be 100% happy in a system like that, where there's all these compromises for all these different groups. But yeah, I also think that some of the centrists are kind of shitty, and they want to protect their own power and their own prestige and their own paycheck. And so they view a rising progressive wing of the Democratic Party as a threat to themselves. And I think that's really shitty. And I would hope that we could vote all of those people out of existence. Yeah, there was a great guy who was running to replace Nancy Pelosi in San Francisco right now named Saikat. And I think that everybody should support him. I hope that he will blow up the same way that Mamdani did. So, fingers crossed, let's make that happen. Digital Foods over on YouTube says, any thoughts on the Young Republicans text leaks? They look like a bunch of monsters. So, unfortunately, I think that what's going to happen with this is the same way that we treat all negative stuff coming out of the right wing in this country, which is that we kind of like isolate them and say, oh, this is just those people, as opposed to thinking that this is anything, endemic to the right wing in this country. We need to recognize that a lot of people in the establishment Republican Party, like the people who are intimately involved with the RNC and elected Republicans, like those people are straight up fucking white nationalists, Christian extremist nationalists. Like there is an intimate connection between those philosophies and the people in charge of this Republican Party. It has become so much more extreme and dedicated to their minority ruling over the rest of us with an iron fist. And so when the young Republicans who have watched the Trump coalition accumulate so much political power and act brazenly in the face of our Constitution and of our laws, do whatever the fuck they want, kill whoever the fuck they want, detain whoever the fuck they want, steal as much money as they want. They see that as the winning team. And they're like, all right, sweet. We're going to do what those guys are doing. And we are also going to have our secret signal chats where we are making fucking racist, anti-Semitic, misogynistic jokes. It is an intimate part of the Republican Party. And while not every Republican voter is like that, I think every Republican voter needs to recognize that those are the people that they are in coalition with and really start to do some soul searching. Like, do you really think that those people have the best interests of this country in mind? Do you really think that they give a shit if something happens to you, even if you are a white Christian as well? A party that is willing to do this to other people will do this to you if it suits their interests. Alrighty. Samurai Destroyer says, do you think later more Christians support Democrats or Republicans? I mean, there's all different kinds of Christians. I think that the people that actually believe in Christ's teaching of love thy neighbor, heal the sick, feed the hungry, clothe the poor, house the homeless, like those are obviously the people that are going to be Democrats. But, there's more megachurch Protestants who, their whole fucking thing is political power, and so they're going to stick with the Republican Party. Period says, opinion on AIPAC. I don't like them. They suck. Ace says, what is your thoughts on Graham Plattner running for Congress in Maine? He's dope as hell. He's exactly the kind of Democrat that we need right now. There is an advantage that people have when they just kind of pop up in the political scene where we don't know all that much about them. And so is there a skeleton in his closet? Is he going to say something in the future that he is going to regret and it's going to make us all go like, yeah, possibly, probably. We need to remember that our politicians are human and that they are not perfect. And so I love what Graham Plattner has been doing so far, and I am not going to be upset if we find out that he one time drove a diesel truck into the ocean and how terrible that was for the environment, Okay, Jackhammer says, I just saw a Republican chat has more people in it than all these Democratic lives put together. LOL. Yeah, Russian bots will give you a lot of traffic, thankfully. Jerusalem Crusader says, do you think Republicans would win the New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania governor's race? I don't think that they have serious I only know about New York. I don't think that they have serious candidates in New York. I think they have extremists running for those seats in New York. Republicans have won those governor's races in the past. For Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania fucking loves Josh Shapiro, so I think it's unlikely that they will vote for anybody else. I don't know if he's term limited out of this upcoming governor's race, or if he is going to drop out of being governor to run for president. But yeah, it's possible, but I just don't think it's likely. Come on, man says, do you like horses a lot? Tim Walz does. I don't know what that means. Ace says, yeah, like Dems are not perfect because they are a party of humans, but still better than Republicans. 100% completely agree with that. Slade says Democrat, and then a whole bunch of laughy faces. Don't know what you mean by that. Terps Sichor says they talk the talk, but do not walk the walk. I don't know what you're referring to. Let's see here. Puppy Bear says crooks, too much stealing. Jerusalem Crusader. Let's get here. Carmine says, if Biden did January 6th, how do we know he's not in power right now? That's an excellent question, Carmine. Let's see here. Let's get all of the current Dems. Jack says, wait, what's these text leaks? So there was a story that just came out, Jack, about a bunch of satellite groups called Young Republicans. So there's like Young Republicans of New York, Young Republicans of Tennessee, Young Republicans of Hawaii, insert, state or county or city here. And a bunch of them have had their text chains leaked. And in the leaks, we are discovering that they are making a bunch of racist, misogynistic, anti-Semitic comments. Some of them are jokes, some of them are serious. Real authoritarian, fascist-leaning shit where they're talking about beating the shit out of people that don't agree with them and jailing people and et cetera, et cetera. Samurai Destroyer says, what do you think of people who are politically purple? I mean, I've heard whispers about this purple revolution, and honestly, I'm pretty skeptical about it. I think that if we are looking at this as the people are purple and the billionaires are the people that we are against, I can get down with that. But what I worry is that the rhetoric of the Purple Revolution is that both parties are equally terrible, and that is just factually inaccurate. Dan Blackbird says the Prince album. Yeah, we are a political party of loving purple. Ace says, can as state themselves put term limits on how many times a congressperson runs in their states? Potentially. I don't know too much about that, Ace, so sorry about that. Dan Blackbird says, Vivek is learning some harsh lessons right now. Yeah, fucking, I never thought the lepers would eat my face. Vivek is learning that the lepers will eat his face. Is Vivek Ramaswamy really running for governor? Even when they discriminate him, he keeps kissing ass. That is the purity test for racist people on the right, which is, yeah, you could be governor so long as you let us call you fucking racist names to your face and say that you can't be the governor because you are a different religion. Suzer says, I know it's way off, but do you think Kamala will run for president in the next election? I don't really know. There's some whisperings about her and Gavin Newsom going at it together, trying to be the ascendant candidates. And yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to get everybody focused on the midterms in 2026. Period says Dems consult, root, loot, and destroy small business. That is not an accurate statement. Period. So guess what? You're out of here. Scrolling down to the bottom. All right. Yes, low on comments today. Samurai Destroyer says, do you think voters who agree with Republicans on things but don't necessarily support Republicans are bad? I think it just depends, Samurai Destroyer. So it's like there are rich people who vote Republicans because they recognize that Republican policies make them richer, even though that hurts a lot of people. People starve to death. People lose their homes. People can't pay their electric bills, their medical bills. And they don't care. And so they continue to vote Republicans because it makes them richer. Those people fucking suck. There are people who like the fact that Republican policies tend to disenfranchise minority groups like the LGBTQ community or people of color, and they continue to vote for Republicans. They might even recognize that Republican policies hurt them as well, but they hurt minorities worse, and so they're really happy about that, so they continue to vote for them, and those people fucking suck too. And there are people who think untrue things about Republicans and Democrats and who get tricked into voting for Republicans. So people that think that the border was wide open during the Biden administration and they think that all the problems in this country are being caused by illegal immigrants, which is a lie that has been fed to them by their media or their Facebook group or their church. And so they believe that they're doing the right thing for America by voting for Republicans. And I don't think that those people are necessarily bad or stupid. But yeah, it can be really difficult to exit out of your information bubble. There's a lot of incentives keeping people in them. Writer says, why do people invest so much time energy, and effort into politics? Well, for two reasons, Ryder. Number one, if you are a really shitty person and you are able to manipulate who gets elected and what they do when they're in office, then you can make a ton of money doing that. If you are a good person, then potentially what you're concerned about is what are the policies that we can all implement that would help? Because I see people struggling every single day, people that I love, people that I care about, people that I just see as I'm driving in my car down the street. And I don't like that. I don't like anybody suffering, even if it's somebody that I don't know. And I worry about things that the scientists are telling us. And I need to dig into what needs to get done, why isn't it getting done, what needs to change to make it happen. And that is what politics is. And so I think everybody should be educated and engaged in what our government is doing and checking out data that is coming out, because that is really important. That without an educated populace, we are going to continue voting for the same pieces of shit who are ruining everything and are making it more and more difficult that people like you and me to just live our fucking lives. Right, sorry for tomorrow says, I wish I was in a political climate that I didn't have to focus so heavily on politics. Yeah, fuck it, you and me both, man. I remember during the Obama administration, I could just make whatever jokes I wanted. I could just focus on my career, not have to worry about doing political live streams where I try to convince people to vote and stuff like that. God damn, do I wish for some precedented times. Writer says, how do I identify non-biased data sources? So every human has some unconscious biases. So the only way that you can counter that is by trying to get confirmation on stories from multiple sources. So on any given day, I am checking out legacy media, centrist media, progressive media, forward media, independent media, stuff like that. The only thing that you should avoid is right-wing media and right-wing sources, because the data is unequivocal and it is definitive that right-wing sources are less reliable and less accurate by a factor of like 10. The latest numbers that I saw coming out of PolitiFact said that right-wing news sources were 20% accurate. So 80% bullshit. Those are not good odds. The Sav Eli says, what is the Podesta plan? I don't know what the Podesta plan is. Samurai Destroyer says, well, what if the voters agree with the idea of a free market then? If voters agree with the idea of a free market and so they are voting for Republicans, I want to know if they are aware of all the things that Republicans do that are terrible, aside from the economy, that are bad for the economy, and the things that they are doing that do not adhere to free markets. You know, the Trump administration just co-signed the company Intel is now a part of the American government. That is not free market capitalism. That is fucking crony socialism, you know? How is another tech company going to compete with Intel, where now they are dealing with the legacy of Intel in addition to the might of the American government? And that's not free markets. Israel Franco says, is it true Pelosi going against Katie Porter? I don't know if Pelosi is going to try to become governor of California. I think that would be weird if she tried to do that, because she's so old. I can't imagine that she would try to pivot from a job that she is currently too old for to a different job that she is also too old for. Yeah, I think what we can expect from Nancy Pelosi is that she's going to try to just keep her seat until she dies, potentially. But we can stop that by voting for Saikot in the primaries if you live in San Francisco. Jacob Vargas says, why didn't Biden repeal the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act? Why didn't Biden repeal the Jobs Act? You know, Diego Vargas? I'm not 100% sure on that. My gut is telling me that it would have been difficult because some of those tax cuts didn't expire until what would have been his second term or Kamala Harris's second term. And so they potentially had more political ease using reconciliation to pass the I think it was the Inflation Reduction Act that they used reconciliation for. And they can only do reconciliation a certain number of times, and so I think they were focused on that. And it's also possible that they didn't have 50 votes for repealing those because they had centrist, corrupt shills like Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, who potentially were going to vote against it. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. If I had to wager a guess, as I'm kind of like talking you through right now, I would say that it was Sinema and Manchin being completely unamenable to repealing those tax cuts for the rich. Okay, Joe AO2 says, what's the biggest threat to our country currently? Russia, China, Israel. I think the biggest threat to our country right now is the Republican Party and the billionaire class. Okay. Sorry for tomorrow says, I think what is harmful to our future is some of these older leaders refusing to pass the torch to the younger generation. I completely agree with you. Sorry for tomorrow, 100%. Lee Ming says, you support MAGA or liberal? I'm a progressive Democrat. I do not support Donald Trump. Diego Vargas says, can they ban private equity companies from buying up entire neighborhoods, at least at the state level? Again, Diego Vargas, that is some lawyer shit that I am unfamiliar with, unfortunately. I haven't seen any state try to do that, and my gut tells me that if they haven't tried, it's because it is legally dubious territory. But it's possible, I guess. Diego Vargas, you should call your reps and ask them that question. I think they'd be a lot more knowledgeable about answering it than me. Let's see here. Samurai Destroyer says, what if right-wing sources are correct then? So Samurai Destroyer asked, we were talking about right-wing news sources being less accurate based on the data. And he said, what if right-wing sources are correct? So what if all of the various independent bodies that judge whether or not things are accurate or not are all the ones that are ill-informed, and it's only the right-wing sources that are accurate? And, it's a good question, but I think the data is overwhelmingly on the side that they're wrong. And I'll tell you why. Here's my North Star for this. Number one, what you want to do is see if a bunch of independent organizations are all agreeing on something, and if they are, it's probably the Republicans that are full of shit, because PolitiFact and mainstream media and independent media, like, they are not all colluding together. This is part of the reason why the MAGA coalition is so obviously ill-informed, where you're like, we are trusting one man, where doctors and scientists and financial experts and Democrats and law enforcement, insert profession here, the majority of all those people are saying that what Trump is telling you is a lie. And they're like, well, I don't believe all of those people in it. And that includes some Republicans like Mitt Romney and Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger. I am only going to believe Donald Trump. So, we're looking at, is it just one specific source that is accurate or a whole bunch of sources that are independent? That's number one. Number two is, what can I discern just by myself, just with my naked eye, about which of the two political parties are full of shit? And my two North Stars for that are trickle-down economics and climate change. Like, I can look out my window and see that the Republicans have been lying about both of those things. Trickle-down economics is gonna make all of us prosper. Well, income inequality is worse now than it was during the Gilded Age. There are more people dying on the streets of poverty. People can't afford healthcare. People can't afford food. Cost of living is going through the roof. We're in a cost of living crisis, while the rich have literally never been richer. They're fucking eating caviar and cocaine 3 fucking meals a day on their private jets, in their mega mansions, in their mega yachts, of which they own multiples. So yeah, that shit ain't trickling down. And you're still saying that it's trickle-down economics? I think you're probably full of shit. And climate change, I can look out my fucking window and see that it is way warmer now, and that things that used to not happen are happening with great regularity. I lived in New York City for 20 years, and there was significantly more snow on the ground when I first moved there and versus when I moved away. So if they are lying about those things that I can clearly see are bullshit, they're probably lying about the things that I can't discern by myself. Alrighty. Embrace Primalism has a very long comment that I will get to. Samurai Destroyer, I'll get to your stuff as well, but let me dig into some more of these TikTok comments here. Carl Vaughn says, anyone else spending $300 on half a cart of groceries? I mean, the prices are up, man. There's no denying that. KYJH says, most of Trump's followers are not that smart and easily manipulated. I don't know if that's a nice thing to say, KY. I think we should assume that a lot of these people are perfectly nice and perfectly smart, but because of their communities or their Facebook feed or where they went to school or where they go to church, they are incentivized to not do anything to disrupt their prior beliefs. Diego Vargas says, now the only affordable states to live in are those in the South where nobody wants to move to. I mean, potentially people will move there and change the politics of those states. Who knows? Okay. Carmine says, don't say that the TikTok police will get you. I mean, there's a reason why I am multicasting. You know, if you ever don't see me on here 5 days a week, and you know, it is because the new right-wing TikTok has decided that I don't get to be here. Delta Don says, what do you think will happen from here? If people do the work, Delta Don, then we can go back to having a regular-ass country that actually takes care of its citizens and respects the rule of law and our constitutional rights. If we don't do the work, then we're fucked. Then we turn into Germany circa the 1930s, modern-day Russia, modern-day Turkey and Hungary, etc., etc. KY says, no, if they were smart, they would see Trump for the things he does. I mean, lots of smart people are on board with what Trump is doing, or lots of smart people are easily manipulated by misinformation. You know, it has nothing to do with how smart you are. If you look at the statistical data, people that don't get an education tend to vote for Republican more than people who do get an education. And I don't think that makes those people less smart, but maybe there are things that you learn when you get an education that make it easier to parse through misinformation and propaganda. Okay, Carl Vaughn says, how do you feel about Trump turning the USA into a pump and dump scheme? I'm against it, Carl Vaughn, and I agree that it is happening, you know. So that's a real bummer. Nacho, my pretty face, good to see you again. It's a cult, and all kinds of people have joined cults. Rich, smart, accomplished, etc. Nacho, my pretty face is on the money. Okay, Scott Clower says Barron will shut you down. Yeah, I'm sure he will. That's what being born on third base will get you. Okay. Carl Vaughn says, did anyone ever tell you look like a younger Gavin Newsom? Guys, I'm getting way too many compliments today. You're going to give me big heads. Okay. Joey says, why is it okay for AIPAC to lobby to 96% of our politicians? So AIPAC is actually constructed of American money, so they don't have to register as a foreign lobbying organization, and also they use a loophole. They say, we're not actually lobbying for Israel. We are lobbying for the relationship between America and Israel. I think it's kind of bullshit, but as long as the Republicans are in charge, they are not going to stand up to AIPAC even a little bit. Okay, Joey says, how is it Republican billionaires' fault when 80% of billionaires vote blue? 80% of billionaires do not vote blue, Joey. 75% of all billionaire political donations went to Republican candidates in 2024. Donald Trump has more billionaires in his cabinet than any president in history. And all of that makes sense if you consider that the platform of the Republican Party was basically written by billionaires to be good for billionaires, and the platform of the Democratic Party was written to be better for the 99%. If you'd like me to talk more about that, Joey, I will. Let's see here. Sorry for Tomorrow says, I'm not against Republicans, but unless those Republicans stand against MAGA, they are complicit. I mean, yeah, there's some aggressive empathy that I would argue for people that are just stuck in an information bubble. But I get being mad at people that are voting for this. I understand. Okay, Joey says, I'd love to have a debate convo with you because I agree on about half of what you are saying. Joey02 says, Democrats and Republicans are both bought off. Okay, Joey. So I'm not into debates. I don't believe they're productive. I'm not trying to win. But I think that you're off base here by saying that Democrats and Republicans are both bought off. So, no, I'm with you, Joey. He says not debate, bad words. Yeah, I know you said debate / conversation about it, and I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt that you did mean conversation there. I guess what I would say to you is, do you have any, before I allow you on the live stream or anything like that, do you have any substantive response to the claims that I have made about both the data that suggests that billionaires give more money to Republicans than Democrats, the fact that Donald Trump has more billionaires in his cabinet, and the fact that the platforms line up with the motivations of billionaires giving more money to Republicans. Like, do you have anything to say about that? Herb says, do you think Trump will live out his second term? I have no idea, but he's going to try to stay president until he dies, even if that means, declaring martial law, running for a third or fourth term, shit like that. Ray Private says, Dems won't make AIPAC register with FARA either. They are much more likely, Ray. There are a record number of Democrats that are standing up to AIPAC and the Netanyahu government right now. Right now, this is happening. I'm sure that we can all look to the past and see examples of Democrats doing what AIPAC wants, taking AIPAC money, doing what Israel wants, etc. But right now, more than half of the Democratic Senate voted against sending more money and weapons to Israel. There is a sea change happening within the Democratic Party, maybe not as fast as you or I would like, but it is happening. And that is not happening in the Republican Party. Okay, Ray says delusional. Okay, well, ask a question or I'm going to boot you. Super Mario says, I have Trumpers in my family. One made the remark yesterday that Michelle Obama is a guy. I don't think it's worth it to argue with those people, Super Mario, but go off, King. The other Jen says, both sides' argument is lame. It's pretty clear the Republicans are the problem. I completely agree with that. All right, let's get back over here. Embrace Primalism. Sorry for not reaching you sooner. Says, why is the world full of baseless, monist barbarians who invoke liberty and justice in empathy incantations to a classical idea long since decontextualized, or worse, an ancient monist dogma? Why have we neglected the divine grammar of the world's greatest lingua franca for millennia just to invoke to its invotations to appease our monist pathologies? Why have we forgotten our alphabet? I think you're doing a bit, Embrace Primalism, so congratulations for getting me to read that, I guess. Department of Offense says, she did ruin school lunch, though. Was never the same after. Whew. Let's see here. Diego Vargas says, will AOC primary Chuck? I don't know, but seems like I think she should. Alicia Benedict says, are Democrats not also somewhat bought off like Republicans? Everyone is sponsored. So it is true, Alicia Benedict, that there are Democrats who are influenced by billionaire and corporate money. There are corrupt Democrats, but there are big differences between both the scale of the corruption and the policies of the parties. The policy of the Republican Party is to allow for more corruption. The Supreme Court cases that they are bringing, now that they have a sympathetic Supreme Court, the legislation that they are backing, all of it is trying to make corruption easier, harder to spot, more legal, etc. Whereas the Democratic Party is trying to get money out of politics. They're trying to make it so that this kind of corruption does not happen. Number two, the platform of the Democratic Party, influenced by the billionaire class, is just watering down policies that help the 99%. Or they're trying to make it so that you're not being, punitive to the billionaire class, but we are supporting the lower class. We don't have to hurt companies and extremely profitable, business people while we're helping, the meek and the poor. That's the worst that can happen. But because the Republicans' base is already a wish list for the billionaire class, billionaire money just puts that on fucking nitro. Billionaire money just makes that bigger, harder, faster, stronger, And so there is a massive difference. And I feel confident in saying that there are more politicians in the Democratic Party who do things like not have a super PAC, not take corporate money, shit like that, than there are in the Republican Party. Alrighty, let's see here. Who asked that question? Because that was a great question. Alicia, what do you think about that answer, Alicia? I'd love to hear it. Joey says, billionaires give money to both sides. They control media, our education, books, our politicians, etc. Joey, that's not, you're not really commenting on the things that I said, though. You're kind of making a separate point for me to argue against, but you are ignoring the data that I have already given you. I find those points that I told you already to be pretty definitive and convincing. The billionaires give money to both sides argument is kind of undone by the fact that billionaires give a lot more money to Republicans, and the platforms are for the Republicans. The fact that billionaires control the media and our education, books, our politicians, etc., it is painting with a too wide of a brush, you are giving cover to the worst actors by saying shit like that. So yeah, thank you, Alicia. I appreciate you being here. Sorry for Tomorrow says the health of our nation shouldn't be a political debate. Completely agree with that. Carbine says, you find anybody for the podcast yet? I have not, Carbine, and I don't know if you noticed, but I've stopped asking people to help find me people because nobody was doing it. you know? Alrighty. Let's see here. The other Jen says MAGA is crying about red dye, but they all hated Michelle Obama's healthy lunch. That is accurate. Let's see here. Scrolling, looking for comments. It's the Rocketeer. Good to see you again. Have we ever thought about just eating the rich? I feel like some people have said it already. I feel like some people have commented that. It's the Rocketeer says, wait, this is the first time hearing about a podcast. I was pitching for a little while. I'm looking for squishy voters. I'm looking for people that don't vote. I'm looking for centrists. I'm looking for people that are like soft Republican voters, not MAGA Republicans, but people that I can talk to try to get them to be part of the crusade against the current Republican Party, to try to unelect every single Republican who is currently in office, from president to dog catcher, to recognize the damage that the Republican Party is doing, how unfair the national rhetoric is towards the Democratic Party, the fact that Democrats never get any credit and Republicans never get any blame. But I haven't been able to find anybody. I was asking everybody out there, like, can you find me those people? And nobody hit me up. So, I guess that podcast will have to wait. Samurai Destroyer says, I don't deny the data. Actually, it just that I'm pretty skeptical on both sides. Like, I'd rather look nonpartisan independent views on things and look for evidences. I completely agree with you on that, Samurai Destroyer, but that's the reason why I advocate for checking out multiple sources. But yeah, there's something so clear that happens where a Republican politician or the Republican Party will do something negative, and we will all rush to justify and rationalize the negative thing that they did. And the Democratic Party will do something positive, and we will all rush to justify why it isn't as good as we think it is, and why it's actually bad, and why we should vote against Democrats because they did that good thing. So I think we need to be clearer about when the data is definitive and when we don't have to equivocate anymore that the Republican Party is lying to us, that right-wing sources are lying to us. And while the Democratic Party is not perfect, they are so much better than the Republican Party that it's not even worth debating. Okay, Samurai Destroyer also says, why would among progressives believe both Dem and Republican are bought off, since they argue because money in politics makes both corrupt? Why would among progressives believe both Dems and Republicans are bought off? Why wouldn't progressives? Can you clear up that question, Samurai Destroyer? I'm not sure what you're asking. All right, back into these TikTok comments. Marie says, Ground News says if article leans left or right. Yeah, Ground News is another good place to get that information. Not showing my pretty face sounds like you need PR support to find podcast guests. I do, not showing my pretty face. Alrighty. Department of Offense says studies show that Michelle's program had pretty much zero effect. I doubt that, Department of Offense. I would want to see that study. I would want to know more about what was implemented. I would want to know more about reasons why it potentially wasn't implemented. You could make an argument that the Affordable Care Act was ineffective if you only look at the red states that denied accepting the Affordable Care Act subsidies. Alrighty. Alicia Benedict says, can you explain what eating the rich means? I kind of get it, but not fully. I mean, it's obviously, it's like hyperbolic, it's fun, it's punk rock, it's trying to communicate that the rich don't do anything for us, that they are a parasite sucking away all of the value from our work, and that we should stand up against them, that we should dismantle the systems that prop them up, that we should have a more equitable society. Eat the rich is kind of like, we are the only value that these rich people have is to nourish us with their meat. It's obviously not serious. I'm sure that there are some people out there who are serious about it and who literally want to cannibalize the rich, but that is not what the majority of us who say it mean. We are being silly and hyperbolic, but also we're saying that the rich have no value, and that we should eliminate billionaires and have a more equitable society. Alrighty. Sorry for Tomorrow says, I'm asking because you seem to oppose the efforts made. Ooh, interesting. Let's see here. Where is the rest of that comment? Sorry for Tomorrow. Are you saying that it's a bad thing to focus on the health of the country? Or is that? I don't think that comment was for me. Right. Let's see here. Alicia Benedict says, so freaking true. Excellent. Do Not Go Gently says that people will not be ready for how bad it's going to be. I am also worried about. Do Not Go Gently says, work for a health insurance company. We have been advised that people will not be ready for how bad it's going to be. Interesting. Can you speak more about that, Do Not Go Gently? Because I'm wondering if you're talking about things like climate change or specifically the policies of our current government causing chaos in the future. Samurai Destroyer says, sorry, my question is why there are progressives who believe Dems and Republicans are corrupt and bought off by the rich. Samurai Destroyer, I'm still not 100% sure. I think that progressives are the ones who would be most likely to believe that both Democrats and Republicans are corrupt and bought off by the rich, because it's progressives that are the ones that are advocating for getting money out of politics. And so they would be the ones pointing to this being a bipartisan issue. I think that's what you're asking, right? I could be wrong. But yeah, I mean, I can think of a bunch of reasons why a progressive like myself would argue against the idea that both parties are equally corrupt. I think anybody who pays attention to politics probably recognizes that it is not, equally terrible on both sides. All right, scrolling down to the bottom, CJ Jackal says, do you think we get fair elections in 2026? We do if we demand them, CJ, because we have the power. The elections are run by each individual state. And so if we put enough political pressure on our elected representatives to not cow to the demands of the authoritarian Trump administration, to not allow the military or ICE to intimidate us, to not allow them to steal our ballot boxes, then we will have a free and fair election in 26 and 28. We can't sit on our hands and hope that our Secretary of State isn't an election truther. We have to do the work to demand free and fair elections in 26 and 28. Ready. Notification says, thoughts on gambling. I typically don't, because usually you don't win. Donut Outlander says, if you were president, what would be the first thing that you would do? I don't know what the first thing I would do is, but I would say, if you're president, you don't necessarily have enough power to enact an agenda. But if I was like emperor of America and I could do whatever I want, abolish the electoral college, rebalance the Senate, make partisan and racial gerrymandering illegal, universal health care, universal basic income, get the money out of politics, increase taxes on the rich, separate the police departments into various organizations. So instead of the police getting called when somebody's having a psychotic episode on the street, we are going to potentially be sending somebody who's an expert in dealing with people who are having psychotic episodes on the street, et cetera, et cetera. There's just a couple of things for you. Let's see here. Rena, I just saw that you blocked Cooper, and boy, oh boy, did you nail it, D1234 says, that makes too much sense. What I said? I hope that's what you mean. Alrighty, anything else to comment on here? Alicia Benedict says, is it true that some election machines were recently bought by Trump loyalists? Liberty something. Yes, that is unfortunately is true. So Dominion, which is a voting machine company that did win a massive settlement against Fox News because they had made up that Dominion helped steal the election in 2020, they were bought by a different voting machine company that is intimately aligned with the Republican Party. And so I think that whoever lives in states that use those voting machines need to be on the phone with your elected representatives every fucking day and start a fucking political action group so that you and your friends are calling every day as well, so that you can demand that there is some oversight on your election. Because if it is just left up to those electronic voting machines, I think it's game over, Scott Clower is pointing out that Trump once said, you will never have to vote again. Isn't that interesting? D1 says, what do you think is going to happen to TikTok when MAGA gets its hands on it? My guess is that it's going to look a lot like what Twitter looks like right now, where all of the voices that are getting amplified are right-wing voices and right-wing extremist voices, and everybody on the left is going to be banned or shadow banned, or we're going to have language that we're not allowed to use. You're not going to be able to say climate change, or you get banned for a week or something, So yeah, that's part of the reason why I multicast, is that people recognize they can find me in other places should TikTok become a place where I'm not allowed to go anymore. Oi. Shork, good to see you again. Says, do you believe to any extent the evidence that the 2024 swing state votes were manipulated. I think the Rockland County case is interesting. I think it shows that there is a potential that those specific voting machines were tampered with in a way that deleted or changed votes for Kamala Harris. If we're just looking at the statistical anomalies argument, there are other statistical facts that you could use to argue that the election was fair. And so I'm not really convinced by I think it's called like the Election Truth Alliance or something that showed the statistical anomalies, that was the argument that they had, that the election was stolen in 24. The Rockland County case is different. The Rockland County case is substantive evidence that vote totals were tampered with, potentially. We have to wait to see what discovery shows. We have to wait and see how that trial works out. BB Fan says, what other platforms do you do live calls? I only stream on TikTok, Twitch, and YouTube right now. And live calls I take very rarely. It is really just, It is just at my whim. I am fickle. I am mercurial in my power. I only let specific people up at specific times when the mood suits me. And if it stops suiting me, I will end the call immediately. D1, this is what it's like living under an authoritarian regime. If you don't like how I'm dealing with my life, boy, oh boy, are you going to really hate what Republicans are doing in the government right now. Right, Do Not Go Gently says, I'm in North Carolina. We voted all Dems down the ballot except for Trump. That's suspicious. I think that you could make an argument that it's not. I think you can make an argument that in a swing state like North Carolina, there are people who voted for Trump but wanted a check on his administration by voting for down ballot Democrats. It's just one argument, potentially. But again, because of this Rockland County case, I am completely open to seeing evidence that voting machines were manipulated to give the election to Trump and Republicans. But I have to wait for that data to come out. Right, Pamela says, you do you, we love you no matter what. Thank you, Pamela. BB Fan says, what other platforms? All right, I did that one. Yeah, TikTok, Twitch, and YouTube. Those are my 3 channels. Okay. Donut Outlander says, once the guy leaves or is forced to leave office, will he immediately be jailed or put on trial? So that depends entirely on how much power the Democrats have in government and how much political pressure we are putting on them to hold the people that did this shit accountable. The people who are very rich and very powerful, like Donald Trump and his acolytes, they have many mechanisms by which they can skirt justice and accountability. The Supreme Court, for example, ruled that Donald Trump is immune from any indictments or for the things that he did in office that they declare are official business, but there are other things that he has done that are illegal that we can get accountability for, and potentially we could seat more Supreme Court justices to undo that decision. There's a lot of things we can do if Democrats fucking run the table in the next 2 elections. But it's not going to be like a day one thing. We have to do the work. And the Democratic Party has to do the work. Okay, Pamela says, can states go after him? Potentially. I've seen some people sort of like pinging that idea around. In the Biden administration, New York State did indict, I think like 3 different states indicted Donald Trump. So yeah, the states do have some power there as well. All right, everybody. I have an appointment to get to, so I'm going to start to wrap things up. Get in your final questions, everybody. And thank you for being here. Thank you for the gifts, the likes, the shares, the questions, everything. It is your support that allows me to do this show. I do this show because I think it helps. And if I didn't have a lot of people watching, then I don't think I'd be able to do it. And so I'd have to find another way to help. And that would be a bummer. Because I like doing this show and I think it helps. If you want to support the show financially, you can, but you don't have to, of course. I have a Patreon that you can join for as little as $1 a month. I have a store that you can buy things from, and you can also send gifts and be a super subscriber and shit like that on TikTok and Twitch and YouTube. I am unfamiliar with all the various ways of sending people money online, but they exist, and you can use them if you like. If there are any questions that you have that I was not able to get to on this live stream, DMs are open. Email me through my website. Hit me up on my Discord. Don't be shy. I am in this to win this, guys. So if I can be a resource for you to become more educated about politics, to become more engaged and activated, and point you to great groups to volunteer with and great politicians to support, I want to be that resource for you guys. So use me and abuse me. Use me until I am all used up. The Discord is a great resource also because there are threads there for recommendations for podcasts and for books and for actions that you can take as a citizen to try to help fight what's going on, to be a part of the crusade to unelect every single Republican politician from president to Democrat, from president to dog catcher. Excuse me. Yeah, and it's a great place to get in touch as well. And lastly, I hope that you all will all do the work, because it is only through us doing the work that we're going to be able to get out of this, guys. No Kings protest on Saturday. Yes, everybody go to the No Kings protest on Saturday. Everybody vote yes on Prop 50 if you live in California. And yeah, Alicia, you are a great new addition to the live stream. Shork says, is there any America-centric justification for the Argentina bailouts? No, it helps American billionaires, I guess, but it doesn't help American citizens at all. All right, I will see you guys later. Do the work, take care of each other, take care of yourselves. Self-care is part of the work, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. Take care, everybody.